My name is Florian Becker, and I'm the director for the Customer Experience and Success portfolio for our end user computing business here at VMware. And I'm here today to tell you a little bit about how we recommend that our customers navigate that journey to an anywhere workspace with our professional services teams. So before we go into this, obviously we know today that we live in a different world than we did 18 months ago. The new normal is that employees are working remotely and have been doing so almost 100% of the time for quite some time. And organizations that were already set up for this had a relatively easy time transitioning into this new world, where we have seen other customers who are really optimized for an on-premises, in the office type of work environment. And when they had to shut down their locations last year at the beginning of the pandemic, had a really hard time getting their users enabled to work remotely and making that switch quickly and effortlessly and seamlessly. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So one of the big advantages, obviously, for any organization to provide this anywhere workspace experience to their users is manifold. And I will not go into every point on the slide, but if you start looking at the top left, for example, it's obviously empowering employees. And not only that, not only enabling them to work remotely, but also having a great experience at the same time, having a consumer-like experience as they're interacting with resources at work. And we have to do this while we're maintaining a security posture. That's important. We can't ignore that. That's a really important topic. And of course, from an IT perspective, we need to think about optimizing our resources, managing costs, and doing those types of things all at the same time as we're going through these transitions. So what's really the right path for that? That's the big question that we hear from our customers all the time. How do I get there? What's the right sequence of steps that I need to take to really get to that outcome that I desire? And do we have all the stakeholders aligned? Do we have the right skill sets? Do we have the right expertise to really realize that vision that we set out to do in the beginning? So, okay, here are some of the considerations that we're discussing with our customers about how to achieve that anywhere workspace, how to provide that anywhere workspace for our users. And one of the things that we're finding is there's so many different scenarios at play. There are mobile devices, there's Windows devices, there's VDI, there's RDSH, and all these different things have different levels of maturity. And if we try to do all of these things all at once, it gets very complicated to navigate. So we're trying to simplify this with our customers and really recommend that in the very beginning of this journey, we're laying out a solution roadmap. We're thinking about what are the use cases, what are the scenarios that I can achieve with hopefully relatively little effort, little level of effort initially, while still realizing business value, and then go into some of the more complicated and more abstract things a little bit later in that journey. So setting out that roadmap is really important, and aligning those goals with the business is really critical to success. And on the back of that, then we can talk about aligning a project, aligning this change with our key stakeholders, not only in IT, but with the right representations from the end user communities, from the business. And what we have also seen helps tremendously is, especially where we're affecting change, where we have people who have perhaps in IT administered certain technologies for many, many years in their career and really build their muscle memory around this. If we now are introducing a new technology to them, we really have to be mindful of this and get those users on board. Their lives will change. We need to enable them. We need to get them on board to make this whole project a success. And of course, on the bottom left of this slide, technical design and implementation. That's what a lot of us are thinking about primarily when we're thinking about a technology implementation, but that's not all of it, right? That's just the technical bits that we have to do. And we're relying to a large degree on our fairly standardized reference architectures and other integration points that we've done with many customers over many years. On the right-hand side, then, thinking about security, really, really important. We've seen a lot of organizations who have all the best intentions, try to get a project off the ground, just then to be slowed down internally because they didn't really think about all the security implications and getting those teams that worry about those topics on a daily basis, getting those teams involved in the project early on. So it's a really important point to think about, just to synchronize internally, like what can we do? What are some of the limitations that we might have? How do we take security considerations into our designs as we deploy the technology? And then on the bottom right, really important, there's really two things that I want to call out, because we've seen sometimes customers not think about this all too much or kind of gloss over this. And I start with the operational pieces, and that's really to say, um, are we equipping ourselves to actually take this new technology and operate it? Can we support our end users? Do we have the common questions written down? Do we have an FAQ? Do we have an ability to monitor the environment? Do we have perhaps a little bit later on an ability to automate some of the manual tasks that are coming with it? And we can start relatively small in this and relatively simple, and then expand upon this as we're maturing the footprint that we're building out. So it's a really important thing to keep in the back of your heads. And then last but not least is the employee adoption, right? Preparing our end users to adopt the technology, communicate to them proactively, perhaps stand up a website, perhaps doing some infographics, perhaps doing some videos that say like, hey, on this date, we're going to make this change, and this is what this means for you. This is what you're going to see in your environment. These are the things that are changing, explaining why we're doing those things. And then on that big day, on that go live day, also being ready to support those end users, perhaps with a little bit more show of force than we normally would, with some white glove treatment, with some extra support for our IT teams to help support those end users, just to make sure that it's going smoothly. I recall early in my career, I had a conversation with a CIO. We did a big implementation of a big and complex system in the healthcare space. And we found ourselves in the situation where we recommended that we do more testing and more integration things, and that would actually push our go live date out. And that CIO said to us, like, that's perfectly fine, because 2 years from now, nobody will remember exactly at what date we went live, but everybody will remember how it went. Everybody will remember what that first experience was. And that's really super critical and important to keep employees on board. And that was a very complex system, but some of that plays into our world here in Anywhere Workspace and end user computing as well. So moving on, one of the ways that we try to think about how do we now take the things that I just talked about and really get them into a structure and into a methodology. And I broke these topics up into technical work, and then also what I would call here consultative work, or things that are a little bit more process oriented, maybe less technical in nature. And as I mentioned earlier on, the strategic planning, developing a project charter, working on a governance model can really pay dividends if we do this early on, really pay dividends through the rest of the engagement. Then for the next four things, and we'll talk about them kind of one by one, but I just want to say the assessment here, the design, build, and integrate, the operation, the adoption, that's basically a single use case or a single journey step, you want to call this. This is basically a single project at the end of which you have users on the platform, devices enrolled, you have a tangible outcome that delivers some business value, right? And within that, again, mapping those journey steps to user groups, to personas that make sense, and aligning them to business value is really important. Then, of course, a lot of technical work is going on in terms of system integration and third-party integration and some other things that we have to do to really stand up the technology and get everything stood up. And then, as I said earlier on, thinking about the operations, what does day 2 look like? Not just day 1, not just the go live day, but what will life be like after that, both for the end users as well as for the different IT roles there, what are those process changes, and really thinking about this and starting to document those, or even automate them and introduce things like monitoring and troubleshooting, some of those advanced steps. And then, as I said a couple of minutes ago, really thinking about the adoption, the enablement, the employee communication, thinking about standing up an IT concierge support. We have done work with our customers where in some instances we set up in physical location little booth or little stands that basically encouraged employees to show up and say like, hey, I need help with enrolling my device, so I have a question. We just had people dispersed through the organization just to help the end users out. And of course, today we're doing a lot of that more virtually as people are in this highly distributed work environment. And then I want to call out the optimization, and we kept this separate here a little bit. The way we're describing is this: there are steps that our customers are taking to improve efficiencies. There are features and capabilities in our products that they're adoption that don't necessarily mean that we're now enrolling additional devices or users, but perhaps things that make our lives in IT a little bit easier, right? So enhanced monitoring, Workspace One Assist is a great example to basically allow screen sharing with end users. That's a great feature for them. Additional things within the employee experience work streams and those types of things, right? So just additional features that are either providing an additional benefit to the end users or apply to us in the IT departments, basically. So having said all of this, where do we actually start with this? How do we get on the journey? And one great way to go about it is to really start with what we call an outcome-focused workshop, right? We're really trying to take that bigger vision and breaking it down into the desired outcomes, aligning those with the business needs, maybe thinking about some obstacles that might come our way as well, prioritize the different steps, as I said before, align the stakeholders, and then really create that project plan, create that action plan, and start executing on this. So here at VMware, we have professional services aligned to the Anywhere Workspace for customers wherever you are in your journey. As I mentioned, the outcome-focused approach is a great way to start with a workshop. We also have a catalog of predefined services that allow you to deploy, configure, and adopt our technologies that are very easy to transact just on a part number off the price list. We do a lot of tailored engagements as well, especially for our larger customers that want to really realize that roadmap that we were speaking of and get help in very specific areas that we can talk about. And oftentimes we also layer in just a block of time that we call a residency that really helps our customers either with the adoption and consumption of the service, IT concierge support, if you will, perhaps layering in additional application or use cases, but just basically things where our experts can help your organization in the areas that you need that you may not know about in a lot of detail upfront. So to learn more about any of those services, just contact your VMware account executive or visit us on the web at vmware.com/services. And with that, I would like to thank you for your time. Thank you for listening and have a great day.